Right now, you're trapped, frozen at the edge of decisions that define your career, your finances, and your reputation. But here's the brutal truth. Indecision isn't just uncertainty, it's silent sabotage. While you hesitate, clearer minds surge forward, claim promotions, and seize opportunities that should have been yours. But what if your next impossible problem wasn't impossible at all? What if mastering critical decisions wasn't about raw genius, but about systematically annihilating the biases secretly suffocating your thinking? The difference between those who rise and those who stagnate isn't luck or talent. It's the ruthless discipline of bias-proof thinking frameworks. In Solve Impossible Problems, critical thinking frameworks that never fail, you won't find vague theories or feel-good motivation hits. Instead, you'll learn battle-tested methods to attack bias head-on, wield powerful mental models like precision weapons, and rewire your brain to make razor-sharp judgments automatic. Imagine waking up tomorrow knowing exactly which problems matter and precisely how to dismantle them. Imagine navigating high-stakes moments with ironclad clarity, making decisions others agonize over in seconds. Imagine the compounding power of relentless accuracy propelling you ahead while your competition spirals into analysis paralysis. The tools inside this book aren't optional. They're essential armor against the enemy within, your own cognitive shortcuts that sabotage success. By turning this page, you commit to a future of decisive confidence, career-defining insights, and unstoppable momentum. Your next breakthrough isn't waiting, it's demanding you act now. Turn the page, master your mind, make solving the impossible inevitable. Chapter 1: Critical Edge. Your brain is lying to you right now. Every decision you make today, from which email to answer first to whether that urgent project deserves overtime, gets filtered through cognitive shortcuts that evolved to keep cavemen alive, not to make you rich. These mental autopilots served our ancestors well when dodging saber-toothed tigers, but in boardrooms and strategy sessions, they're sabotaging your success at rates that would shock you. Here's what the research reveals. Even brilliant professionals with advanced degrees stumble into predictable thinking traps that inflate their error rates by up to 30%. Kahneman and Tversky's groundbreaking work exposed how anchoring bias makes you cling to the first number you hear. Confirmation bias makes you cherry-pick evidence that supports what you already believe, and availability bias makes you overweight recent events while ignoring base rates. Frederick's cognitive reflection test proved something even more startling. Just 1 minute of deliberate analytical thinking can cut wrong answers in half. The difference between elite performers and everyone else isn't raw intelligence. It's the ability to weld together multiple mental models and systematically burn out hidden biases before they poison critical choices. Think about the last major decision you made. Did you consider it through just one lens, or did you cross-reference multiple frameworks? Most people grab the first tool that feels familiar, the mental equivalent of using a hammer for every job. Elite thinkers build what I call a mental model lattice, a collection of diverse lenses like the 80-20 principle, Occam's razor, inversion thinking, and second-order effects. When facing complex problems, they don't just think harder, they think differently, rotating through multiple perspectives until blind spots shatter. But models alone aren't enough. Your brain's built-in biases will hijack even the best frameworks if you don't actively hunt them down. That's where the bias blitz comes in, a 2-minute cognitive sweep you run before any significant choice. Ask yourself, what's the first number or option I encountered? What evidence am I ignoring because it contradicts my preferred outcome? What recent event might be skewing my judgment? This isn't academic theory. This is battlefield-tested mental armor. When you master this critical edge, 3 transformations happen fast. First, you'll detect the invisible hand of bias in everyday choices, suddenly seeing how anchoring makes you accept the first salary offer, or how confirmation bias makes you hire people who think exactly like you. Second, you'll snap-shift viewpoints by swapping mental models on command, analyzing a budget cut through both efficiency and innovation lenses before choosing your approach. Third, you'll rescore one live decision with newly purified logic, often discovering that your obvious choice was actually the worst option. The compound effects are where this gets dangerous for your competition. Cleaner thinking means fewer reworks and faster promotions. Steel-spined confidence under high-stakes pressure. A reputation as the go-to strategist when chaos hits and everyone else is paralyzed by analysis. Here's your implementation sequence. Model first. Tools create leverage. Catalog 5 go-to frameworks and practice switching between them until it becomes automatic. Bias check second. Prevents self-sabotage. Run your 2-minute bias blitz before every important call, email, or presentation. Journal last. Locks gains into permanent muscle memory. Log your decisions and their outcomes to spot patterns your conscious mind misses. This order matters because mental models without bias checking create overconfident disasters, while bias checking without models leaves you paralyzed by doubt. The decision journal transforms both into permanent upgrades to your cognitive operating system. Most professionals will spend their entire careers thinking with the same rusty tools they learned in college, wondering why sharper minds keep leaping ahead. You're about to join a different category entirely. But raw thinking power is only the beginning. Even the most bias-free logic crumbles when it's built on false assumptions and inherited dogma. The next framework will teach you to shred every assumption down to atomic truth and rebuild reality from scratch. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, First Principles. Everything you think you know about solving problems is probably wrong. Right now, you're trapped in a mental prison built from other people's solutions, industry, best practices, and the suffocating weight of "that's how we've always done it." Every time you face a challenge, your brain automatically reaches for the nearest template, the most obvious analogy, the safest precedent. You're not thinking, you're copying. But what if I told you there's a way to shred every assumption, dissolve every inherited limitation, and rebuild reality from its most fundamental truths? This is the power that separates true innovators from the masses who spend their careers rearranging deck chairs. While everyone else argues about which existing solution to copy, first principles thinkers are busy inventing entirely new categories that make the old debates irrelevant. Here's what most people miss. The biggest breakthroughs don't come from improving existing solutions. They come from questioning whether the problem itself is real. A comparative design study revealed that engineers who stripped challenges down to first principles generated 28% more breakthrough concepts than peers who relied on direct analogy. The difference? One group was building on quicksand. The other was building on bedrock. First principles reasoning starts with a simple but devastating question. What must be true? Not what seems true, not what everyone believes, not what worked last quarter. What must be true at the level of physics, mathematics, and verified reality. Think about any problem you're wrestling with right now. How many of your constraints are actually laws of nature, and how many are just inherited assumptions masquerading as facts? The brutal truth is that most of what you consider impossible is just expensive, and most of what you consider necessary is just convenient. The deconstruction phase is where the magic begins. You take your challenge and strip it down to its atomic components, crossing out every assumption until only non-negotiable facts remain. This isn't comfortable. Your brain will fight you every step of the way, desperately trying to smuggle familiar patterns back into the mix. But this discomfort is the price of breakthrough thinking. Once you've reached bedrock, the reconstruction phase becomes an exercise in creative recombination. You're no longer asking, how do others solve this? You're asking, how could this be solved if I were the first person to ever encounter it? The results can be startling. Solutions that seem obvious in hindsight, but were invisible when you were trapped in conventional thinking. The stress test phase separates real insights from clever-sounding nonsense. You hunt for hidden contradictions, challenge your own logic, and force your new solution to survive contact with reality. This is where most breakthrough ideas either prove their worth or reveal themselves as expensive fantasies. When you master this approach, 3 levels of transformation become possible. At the good level, you'll uncover incremental improvements that others missed because they never questioned the underlying assumptions. At the excellent level, you'll reveal cost cuts or time savings of 30% or more by eliminating steps everyone assumed were necessary. At the best level, you'll invent category-defining solutions that competitors spend years trying to copy. The practical exercise is deceptively simple but devastatingly effective. Write your problem in exactly 10 words, no more, no less. This forces clarity and prevents you from hiding behind vague complexity. Then cross out every assumption and keep only physical truths. Finally, combine these truths into 2 radical designs and pitch one today. The 30-minute timer isn't optional. Analysis paralysis is the enemy of breakthrough thinking. Most professionals will spend their entire careers optimizing within existing frameworks, never realizing they're polishing the wrong machine. You're about to join the rare few who rebuild the machine itself. But even the most elegant first principles solution can fail spectacularly if you can't see how all the pieces fit together. The next framework will teach you to perceive the invisible web of connections that determines whether your breakthrough becomes a breakthrough or a beautiful disaster. Chapter 3: Systems Lens. You're fighting the wrong battle. While you're obsessing over individual problems, fixing this bug, optimizing that process, hiring another person to handle the overflow, the real enemy is invisible. It's the web of connections between these problems, the hidden feedback loops that turn your solutions into new problems, the delays that make cause and effect seem unrelated. Most people see trees. Systems thinkers see the forest, the soil, the weather patterns, and the underground root networks that determine whether the entire ecosystem thrives or dies. Here's the brutal truth. Every quick fix you've implemented probably made something else worse. Every local optimization probably created a bottleneck somewhere else. Every brilliant solution probably triggered 3 new problems you won't discover for months. This isn't incompetence. It's the inevitable result of linear thinking in a non-linear world. The managers who consistently outperform their peers aren't necessarily smarter or more experienced. Research shows they're simply better at mapping the invisible connections. When they diagram causal loops before taking action, their project outcomes improve by 40% compared to those who dive straight into solutions. The difference? They see the whole machine before trying to fix individual parts. Think about the last time you solved a problem only to watch it resurface weeks later in a different form. What you experienced wasn't bad luck, it was a system reasserting itself. You treated a symptom while the underlying structure remained intact, like trying to drain a bathtub without turning off the faucet. Systems thinking starts with recognizing 3 fundamental elements that govern every process: stocks, flows, and delays. Stocks are the things you can measure at any given moment: your bank account, your team's workload, your customer satisfaction scores. Flows are the rates of change: money coming in and going out, tasks being assigned and completed, satisfaction rising and falling. Delays are the time gaps between cause and effect that make everything feel random when it's actually predictable. But the real power lies in understanding the feedback loops that connect these elements. Reinforcing loops amplify whatever's happening. Success breeds success, but failure also breeds failure. Balancing loops seek equilibrium, pushing back against change in either direction. The key insight? Tiny interventions at the right leverage points can flip the entire system's behavior. When you master this lens, you stop playing whack-a-mole with symptoms and start conducting the orchestra of underlying forces. At the good level, you'll identify one high-leverage node where a small change creates disproportionate impact. At the excellent level, you'll cut waste loops by 25% by eliminating the circular inefficiencies that drain resources. At the best level, you'll transform vicious cycles into virtuous growth engines that compound your success automatically. The practical exercise is elegantly simple, but requires disciplined thinking. Draw your challenge as input, process, output, feedback arrows on one page. Mark each arrow with a plus or minus to show whether it amplifies or dampens the flow. Then circle the loop with the steepest slope. That's where small changes create big results. Craft one intervention targeting that leverage point and implement it immediately. The most common trap is creating diagrams so complex they become useless. Limit yourself to 7 nodes maximum. Any more, and you're probably overthinking. The second trap is ignoring time delays, which makes you give up on interventions just before they would have worked. Add lag markers to your diagram and adjust your expectations accordingly. Most professionals spend their careers fighting fires, never realizing they could redesign the building to be fireproof. You're about to join the rare few who architect systems instead of just operating within them. But even the most elegant system design can crumble if it's built on a foundation of overlapping responsibilities and gaps in coverage. The next framework will teach you to create crystal clear structure where every element has exactly one home and nothing falls through the cracks. Chapter 4, MECE Grid. Your thinking is leaking. Right now, as you tackle complex challenges, critical factors are slipping through the cracks while you waste energy on duplicated efforts. You think you're being thorough, but you're actually creating a Swiss cheese analysis, full of holes where the most important insights hide. There's a reason why elite consulting firms charge millions for their strategic recommendations, while internal teams struggle to get basic proposals approved. It's not superior intelligence or secret knowledge. It's structural thinking that eliminates chaos and creates crystal clarity. The weapon they wield has a deceptively simple name: MECE, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. 4 words that separate amateur analysis from professional-grade thinking. Here's what most people don't understand about complex problems. The human brain desperately wants to organize information, but it's terrible at doing it cleanly. We create overlapping categories, miss obvious factors, and build mental models that look comprehensive but are actually riddled with blind spots and redundancies. Think about the last major analysis you conducted. How many times did you find yourself saying, "Well, this factor could fit in multiple categories," or "I think we covered everything, but something feels missing"? That uncomfortable feeling wasn't intuition. It was your subconscious recognizing structural flaws in your thinking framework. MECE thinking demands that every element live in exactly one box. No more, no less. If something appears in multiple categories, your structure is broken. If something important exists outside all categories, your coverage is incomplete. This isn't just organizational obsession. It's the difference between solutions that work and solutions that create new problems. The power becomes obvious when you see the results. Consulting teams using MECE frameworks cut their analysis time by roughly 1/3 while boosting stakeholder acceptance by 21%. Why? Because clean structure creates confidence. When executives can see that every angle has been covered exactly once, they trust the conclusions. The framework starts with defining your root question with surgical precision. Vague questions produce vague answers, but a sharp question forces sharp thinking. From there, you branch by primary drivers, then subdrivers, continuing until you reach atomic elements that can't be meaningfully subdivided. But here's where most people stumble. They confuse activity with progress. They create beautiful tree diagrams with dozens of branches, feeling productive while actually drowning in complexity. The validation phase is where discipline separates professionals from amateurs. You must ruthlessly test both exclusivity and exhaustiveness. Does every element belong in exactly one category, and have you truly captured everything that matters? When you master this approach, 3 levels of transformation become possible. At the good level, you'll surface that one missing factor everyone else overlooked, the blind spot that explains why previous solutions failed. At the excellent level, you'll expose duplicate efforts and redirect wasted resources toward high-impact activities. At the best level, you'll present a 1-page issue map so clear and comprehensive that executives approve it immediately. The practical exercise forces immediate application. Draw a 3-level issue tree for any live project you're facing. Start with your core question at the top, branch into primary drivers, then subdivide until you reach actionable elements. Highlight any overlapping leaves and rewrite them until they're MECE clean. Then score each leaf by impact, multiplied by ease of implementation, and act on the highest score today. The most dangerous trap is perfectionism, disguised as thoroughness. If you find yourself creating endless branches, apply the 80-20 principle and stop when additional detail yields diminishing returns. The second trap is accepting overlapping categories because the real world is messy. The real world is messy, but your thinking about it doesn't have to be. Most professionals will spend their careers creating analyses that feel comprehensive but leak value at every joint. You're about to join the elite few who build watertight thinking structures that capture every drop of insight. But even perfect structure crumbles if it's built on the wrong foundation. The next framework will teach you to dig beneath surface symptoms and strike at the hidden roots that feed every problem you face. Chapter 5: Root Cause. You're trapped in an endless cycle of fixing the same problems over and over again. Every month, the same issues resurface with slightly different faces. The project that was definitely fixed last quarter is broken again. The process you optimized is creating new bottlenecks. The team dynamic you resolved has exploded into fresh conflict. You're not incompetent, you're just fighting shadows while the real enemy remains untouched. Most professionals spend their entire careers playing an exhausting game of whack-a-mole, never realizing they could eliminate the moles entirely by understanding what's feeding them underground. There's a reason why some organizations seem to solve problems permanently while others are stuck in perpetual firefighting mode. It's not luck, resources, or superior talent. It's the discipline to dig past surface symptoms and assassinate the origins that keep spawning new crises. Think about any recurring problem in your work life right now. How many times have you fixed it? How many different solutions have you tried? How many meetings have you sat through where everyone agreed the issue was resolved, only to watch it return weeks later wearing a new disguise? What you're experiencing isn't mysterious. It's predictable. Symptoms are just the visible manifestation of deeper structural causes. When you treat symptoms without addressing roots, you're essentially putting band-aids on a severed artery. The bleeding might slow temporarily, but it never stops. The most powerful diagnostic tool ever developed is deceptively simple. Ask why 5 times in rapid succession. This isn't casual curiosity, it's surgical interrogation designed to cut through layers of assumption and excuse until you reach bedrock truth. Here's what happens when you force yourself through all 5 levels. The first why usually reveals an obvious proximate cause that everyone already knows. The second why uncovers the process failure that allowed the proximate cause to occur. The third why exposes the systemic weakness that enabled the process failure. The fourth why reveals the cultural or structural factor that created the systemic weakness. The fifth why strikes the foundational issue that, once fixed, prevents the entire chain from recurring. Toyota's manufacturing records provide stark evidence of this approach's power. When teams completed the full 5-level interrogation instead of stopping at surface fixes, defect recurrence plummeted by 96%. The difference between permanent solutions and temporary patches isn't complexity, it's depth. The fishbone diagram adds visual structure to this excavation process, organizing potential causes into categories like methods, materials, machines, and manpower. But the real breakthrough comes when you combine systematic categorization with relentless questioning, creating a diagnostic framework that leaves nowhere for root causes to hide. When you master this assassination approach, 3 levels of impact become possible. At the good level, you'll uncover the true cause that everyone else missed because they stopped digging too early. At the excellent level, you'll implement a permanent countermeasure that eliminates entire categories of problems before they can manifest. At the best level, you'll spread root cause culture throughout your team, transforming reactive firefighters into proactive problem preventers. The practical exercise demands immediate action and structured thinking. Voice record each why to maintain momentum and prevent your brain from editing the uncomfortable truths that emerge. Document the final root cause and draft one concrete fix in under 15 minutes. Analysis paralysis is the enemy of breakthrough solutions. Schedule a follow-up check in exactly 7 days to verify your intervention worked. The most common trap is stopping at the first plausible answer because it feels complete. Force yourself through all 5 levels even when the third or fourth why seems sufficient. The second trap is blame bias, phrasing causes in terms of individual failure rather than process breakdown. Use neutral language that focuses on systems, not scapegoats. Most professionals will spend their careers treating symptoms, never realizing they could cure the disease itself. You're about to join the rare few who eliminate problems at their source. But even the most elegant root cause solution can fail if it gets strangled by the single constraint that's secretly throttling your entire system. The next framework will teach you to find that hidden bottleneck and exploit it for maximum leverage. Chapter 6, Bottleneck. Your entire system is only as fast as its slowest step. Right now, while you're optimizing every process, upgrading every tool, and pushing every team member to work harder, there's one hidden constraint that's secretly strangling your entire operation. You could double the speed of every other component, hire 10 more people, and buy the most expensive software on the market, and your overall throughput wouldn't budge by a single percentage point. This isn't theory. This is the mathematical reality that separates high performers from the exhausted masses who mistake motion for progress. Think about the last time you tried to improve performance by working on everything at once. How much energy did you burn? How many initiatives did you launch? How much actual improvement did you see? The brutal truth is that 90% of your optimization efforts are wasted because they're targeting the wrong links in the chain. Most people spread their improvement efforts like peanut butter, thin layers everywhere, substantial impact nowhere. They optimize the fast steps to make them faster, upgrade the efficient processes to make them more efficient, and wonder why the overall system still crawls at the same agonizing pace. The theory of constraints reveals a counterintuitive truth. In any system with multiple steps, exactly one step determines the maximum possible throughput. Everything else is either waiting for this constraint or being fed by it. You can make every other step infinitely fast, and your system will still move at the speed of this single choke point. But here's where it gets interesting. Once you identify this constraint, this bottleneck that's secretly running your entire operation, you gain access to extraordinary leverage. Field trials across more than 300 manufacturing plants revealed that focusing improvement efforts exclusively on the constraint slashed lead times by 44% and boosted profits by 20%. The same plants that had been struggling with marginal gains through scattered optimization suddenly experienced breakthrough performance through laser-focused intervention. The identification process requires disciplined measurement, not intuitive guessing. You must time each stage of your process and verify which step consistently takes the longest. This isn't always obvious. The constraint might be hidden behind buffers, disguised by batch processing, or masked by parallel workflows that create the illusion of speed. Once you've found your constraint, the exploitation phase begins. You squeeze every possible unit of performance from this bottleneck without spending money on additional resources. This might mean eliminating downtime, reducing changeover delays, or ensuring the constraint never waits for inputs. The goal is to maximize the utilization of your most precious resource, the step that determines your entire system's capacity. The subordination phase is where most organizations stumble. Every other process must be synchronized to the constraint's rhythm, even if it means deliberately slowing down faster steps. This feels wrong to managers trained to optimize everything, but it's mathematically correct. Running non-constraints faster than the constraint can handle creates inventory buildup, quality problems, and resource waste. When you master this approach, 3 levels of transformation become possible. At the good level, you'll achieve a 10% cycle time reduction by eliminating obvious bottleneck inefficiencies. At the excellent level, you'll see a 40% throughput surge by fully exploiting and subordinating to your constraint. At the best level, your constraint will shift to a different step, and your culture will embrace perpetual improvement through systematic constraint management. The practical exercise forces immediate application through visual mapping. Use sticky notes to represent each stage of your process, then time each stage to identify the true constraint. Tag the slowest step as your drum. It sets the beat for everything else. Create buffers to protect the constraint from upstream variability and establish a rope scheduling system that prevents overproduction. Pilot this new cadence for 1 week and measure the performance delta. The most dangerous trap is misidentifying the constraint based on assumptions rather than data. Time each stage carefully and verify your findings. The second trap is local optimization that sabotages overall performance. Resist the urge to speed up non-constraints beyond what the bottleneck can handle. Most professionals will spend their careers optimizing everything while improving nothing. You're about to join the elite few who find the single lever that moves the entire machine. But even perfect constraint management can crumble when decisions are based on hope instead of mathematics. The next framework will teach you to replace wishful thinking with probabilistic precision and never bet on the wrong odds again. Chapter 7, Probabilistic. Your decisions are gambling disguised as strategy. Every choice you make, from which project to prioritize to which candidate to hire, involves uncertainty. But instead of acknowledging this reality and pricing risk mathematically, you're making bets based on gut feelings, wishful thinking, and the dangerous illusion that confidence equals accuracy. The professionals who consistently outperform their peers aren't luckier or more intuitive. They've simply replaced hope with math. Think about the last major decision you made under uncertainty. Did you assign specific probabilities to different outcomes? Did you calculate expected values? Did you update your beliefs when new evidence emerged? Or did you rely on phrases like probably, likely, and I have a good feeling about this? Here's what separates elite decision makers from the masses. They think in numbers, not adjectives. While everyone else debates whether something is very likely or somewhat probable, probabilistic thinkers are calculating precise odds and expected payoffs. The difference isn't just academic, it's the gap between systematic success and expensive surprises. The foundation of probabilistic thinking starts with a simple but revolutionary concept. Every belief should come with a number attached. Not a vague sense of confidence, but a specific probability that you're willing to defend and update as new information arrives. Bayesian updating is the engine that transforms static opinions into dynamic intelligence. You start with prior odds based on your initial assessment, then multiply by likelihood ratios as new evidence emerges, producing posterior probabilities that reflect reality more accurately than any gut instinct ever could. But the real power comes when you combine probability with payoff analysis through decision trees. Each branch represents a possible outcome with its associated probability and value. Multiply probability by payoff for each path, and you get expected value, the single number that should drive every strategic choice. Tetlock's Good Judgment project provided stunning validation of this approach. Teams trained in Bayesian updating and systematic debiasing improved their forecast accuracy by 60% compared to control groups. The difference wasn't superior domain knowledge or insider information. It was mathematical discipline applied to uncertain situations. When you master probabilistic thinking, 3 levels of transformation become possible. At the good level, you'll abandon one low expected value pet project that everyone else is too emotionally attached to question. At the excellent level, you'll redirect resources to an option with twice the expected value that others overlooked because it seemed less certain. At the best level, you'll institutionalize probabilistic dashboards that turn your entire organization into a prediction machine. The practical exercise forces immediate application of these principles. Start by setting a prior probability for any pending decision, not a range, but a specific number. Then gather one new piece of evidence and update your posterior probability using Bayesian reasoning. Finally, recompute the expected value and make an immediate yes or no decision based on the math, not your emotions. This process feels uncomfortable at first because it exposes the arbitrary nature of most business decisions. You'll discover that many choices you thought were obvious actually have razor-thin expected value differences, while others you considered risky are mathematical no-brainers. The most dangerous trap is probability neglect, using vague language instead of specific numbers. Force yourself to anchor every assessment in numerical probabilities, not descriptive adjectives. The second trap is overconfidence bias, which systematically inflates your estimates of positive outcomes while minimizing downside risks. Combat this by halving your optimistic estimates and doubling your pessimistic ones. Most professionals will spend their careers making decisions based on intuition and post hoc rationalization, wondering why their track record is so inconsistent. You're about to join the rare few who let mathematics guide their choices and compound their advantages over time. But even perfect probabilistic analysis can be blindsided by scenarios you never considered. The next framework will teach you to see around corners and prepare for futures that haven't happened yet, before they ambush your carefully calculated plans. Chapter 8, Scenarios. The future is hunting you. Right now, while you're executing your carefully crafted strategy based on current conditions, multiple possible futures are racing toward you at light speed. Most of them will shatter your assumptions, invalidate your plans, and leave you scrambling to react instead of respond. You're not just unprepared, you're actively blind to the scenarios that could make or break everything you've built. The professionals who thrive during chaos aren't psychic. They're simply disciplined enough to see around corners before the corners arrive. Think about the last time your industry was disrupted, your market shifted, or your key assumptions proved catastrophically wrong. How long did it take you to recognize what was happening? How much time did you waste clinging to outdated strategies? How many opportunities did you miss because you were fighting the last war instead of preparing for the next one? Most people plan for one future, the future they want to happen. They build strategies around best-case scenarios, optimize for current conditions, and pray that tomorrow looks like today but slightly better. This isn't planning, it's wishful thinking with spreadsheets. Scenario planning forces you to confront an uncomfortable truth. The future is fundamentally uncertain, but it's not random. There are patterns, drivers, and inflection points that create a limited set of plausible worlds. Your job isn't to predict which world will emerge, it's to prepare for all of them. The framework starts with identifying two critical uncertainties that could dramatically reshape your landscape. Not minor variables or obvious trends, but fundamental forces whose direction remains genuinely unclear. These become the axes of your scenario matrix, creating 4 distinct quadrants that represent 4 different futures. Each quadrant tells a story, not a detailed forecast, but a coherent narrative about how current forces could combine and evolve. The power lies not in the accuracy of any single scenario, but in the mental rehearsal that prepares you for rapid adaptation when reality begins to clarify. Shell's legendary scenario discipline provides compelling evidence of this approach's value. Their systematic exploration of energy futures helped them navigate the 1973 oil shock while competitors floundered. Later analysis revealed that companies using scenario matrices consistently outperformed peers by 25% during periods of high volatility. The difference wasn't superior prediction, it was superior preparation. The inversion principle adds a crucial dimension to scenario thinking. Instead of just imagining how things could go right, you systematically explore how they could go spectacularly wrong. This isn't pessimism, it's insurance. By stress testing your strategy against hostile scenarios, you build antifragility into your plans. When you master scenario thinking, 3 levels of transformation become possible. At the good level, you'll develop a solid contingency plan for your worst-case scenario, eliminating the paralysis that strikes when things go sideways. At the excellent level, you'll create option hedges that allow you to profit in at least 2 different quadrants, regardless of which future emerges. At the best level, you'll build a strategic portfolio balanced across all 4 scenarios, making you antifragile to uncertainty itself. The practical exercise forces immediate application through visual mapping. Draw a simple 2x2 grid on paper, with your critical uncertainties forming the axes. Label the poles clearly, then sketch newspaper headlines for each quadrant as if you're reading about your industry 5 years from now. Finally, list one specific action trigger for each scenario, the early warning signal that would tell you this future is beginning to unfold. The most common trap is choosing uncertainties that feel important but lack real impact. Rank potential variables by multiplying their impact on your business by their genuine uncertainty. The second trap is treating scenarios as one-time exercises rather than living documents. Calendar quarterly reviews to update your scenarios as new information emerges. Most professionals will spend their careers reacting to surprises that weren't actually surprising. You're about to join the elite few who see futures before they arrive. But even the most comprehensive scenario planning can't save you if your execution crumbles under pressure. The final framework will teach you to attack your own plans with surgical precision before reality does it for you. Chapter 9, Stress Test. Your plan is about to meet its executioner. Not some external enemy or market force, but you. Right now, you're going to become the most ruthless critic your strategy has ever faced. You're going to attack every assumption, exploit every weakness, and hunt down every hidden flaw before reality does it for you at 10 times the cost. This is the final framework, and it's the one that separates professionals who build bulletproof strategies from those who watch their brilliant plans crumble at first contact with the real world. Most people fall in love with their own ideas. They craft elegant solutions, build compelling presentations, and convince themselves that success is inevitable. Then reality arrives like a sledgehammer, shattering their carefully constructed logic with problems they never saw coming. The elite few do something different. They become their own worst enemy before anyone else gets the chance. Red team thinking originated in military strategy, where the cost of overlooking vulnerabilities is measured in lives, not just profits. The concept is brutally simple. Assign a team to play the role of hostile adversaries, tasked with finding every possible way to make your mission fail. Their job isn't to be supportive or constructive, it's to be mercilessly destructive. Premortem analysis adds a time travel dimension to this assault. Instead of asking, how could this succeed? You ask, it's 1 year from now, and this project has failed spectacularly. What went wrong? This prospective hindsight technique forces you to imagine failure as a fait accompli, liberating your mind to explore disaster scenarios that optimistic planning would never consider. Research validates the power of these approaches. Prospective hindsight premortems boost risk detection by 30% compared to traditional planning methods. Defense institutions using structured red team protocols consistently uncover mission-critical vulnerabilities that would otherwise remain hidden until deployment, when discovery becomes catastrophe. But here's where this framework transcends simple risk management and becomes a weapon of competitive advantage. When you systematically stress test your plans, you don't just prevent failures, you discover opportunities that optimistic thinking would miss. Every vulnerability you patch becomes a strength. Every attack vector you neutralize becomes a defensive moat. Every failure mode you anticipate becomes a contingency plan that lets you pivot while competitors panic. The debiasing loops from Chapter 1 become crucial here. Your ego will fight every attempt to criticize your own work. Confirmation bias will make you dismiss legitimate concerns. Overconfidence will convince you that obvious flaws are actually features. You must consciously rerun your bias detection protocols at maximum intensity because the stakes of self-deception have never been higher. When you master this final discipline, the cumulative power of all 9 frameworks crystallizes into something extraordinary. You'll command decisions under pressure without hesitation because you've already stress-tested every choice through multiple lenses. You'll flip crises into competitive advantages within hours because your scenario planning prepared you for volatility while your root cause analysis taught you to exploit system breakdowns. Your relationships will transform as clear thinking cuts through emotional conflict and logical frameworks win trust from even the most skeptical stakeholders. Your persuasive framing will turn opponents into allies because you've anticipated their objections and prepared responses that address their deepest concerns. You'll draft bulletproof strategies in half the time because your mental models eliminate false starts and your MECE structures prevent gaps and overlaps. You'll present evidence-backed cases that sail through approval because your probabilistic thinking quantifies risks while your bottleneck analysis focuses resources on maximum leverage interventions. But the real magic happens through continued practice. These frameworks will shift from conscious tools to automatic reflexes. Your neural pathways will rewire themselves for systematic thinking. Each decision loop will tighten your intuitive accuracy until you develop what others mistake for supernatural judgment. The final exercise demands immediate application. Imagine your most important current project has failed completely. Set a timer for 5 minutes and list 10 specific causes of this failure. Don't edit yourself. Let your paranoia run wild. Then rank each cause by multiplying likelihood times impact and immediately patch the top 3 vulnerabilities. This isn't optional preparation. It's mandatory insurance against preventable disasters. The transformation you're about to experience isn't incremental. It's categorical. You're not just getting better tools, you're becoming a different type of thinker entirely. While others remain trapped in reactive patterns, you'll operate from a position of systematic superiority that compounds with every decision you make. The frameworks in this book aren't just problem-solving techniques. They're the operating system for an elite mind. Master them, and you don't just solve impossible problems, you make the impossible inevitable. Now go become unstoppable.